Almost Famous with John Shea. Featuring local and independent musicians from the South Shore, Boston, and New England. On 95.9 WATD.
Welcome to the Almost Famous Tiny Stage Hour here on 95.9 WATD, brought to you each week by Tiny and Sons Glass. My name is John Shea. We introduce you to independent bands and musicians every Tuesday night from 8 to 10 from across New England. And tonight we are being joined on our tiny stage by Kimon Kirk. How you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. So for those who might not be familiar with you, give us an introduction.
Well, let's see. I grew up in the Boston area, but I live in Los Angeles now, and I guess for the better part of the last 15 years, I've made a living as a bass player, foremost, but then started writing songs and producing records for people. And I just put out a new record of my own called Altitude, I think in February of this year. That got postponed because of COVID a bit. So
like everything else has.
Like everything else, yeah, exactly.
So take us through your journey through the Boston music community.
Yeah. Well, the first people that I really met in Boston were David Champagne and Katie Champagne. And David had been in a pretty groundbreaking band in the 80s in Boston called Treat Her Right, some of whose people then went on to become Morphine. And so David and Katie had a group called the Hey Goods, and I played bass with them for a while. And then I was part of a group that I still work with on and off called Session Americana that has been around now for like 15 years. Let's see, played with a lot of people in the Boston area, you know, from Chandler Travis from the Incredible Casuals on Cape Cod, and Sarah Borges and Dennis Brennan, and did some touring back in 2007. I met Amy Mann and played bass with her a bunch, and that's a relationship that continues to this day. And I've worked with Laurie McKenna, that I think people here know pretty well, who's a local figure.
Yeah, South Shore legend.
Absolutely.
You're also an accomplished producer as well. You mentioned Dennis Brennan. We've had him here several years ago, and you produced one of his albums.
Yeah, it was a record called Into This World, and that was a real labor of love for me, and an honor to get to work with Dennis and his amazing band of Duke Levine and Kevin Barry and Billy Beard and Richard Gates. And I produced an album for Lyle Brewer, a great guitar player who also plays in my band, The Meds, when we perform here. Let's see. I'm actually working on a production right now with an artist from Lakeville, Mass, who also lives in Los Angeles, called Amy Correa.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, she's really awesome. And produced a record for a guy named Steve Shook, who founded the Incredible Casuals on the Cape many, many moons ago, and other people too.
Including your own album, Altitude.
Including my own record, yeah.
So talk about that album.
Well, Altitude is the first time that I went into the studio kind of knowing that I was going to make a full record and being like, okay, I have all of the songs that I want to record and they're ready to go. I'd made 2 records prior to that, and the last one being 10 years before, and that was kind of like, I started recording some songs, and then I recorded some more, and I was like, oh, I might be able to make a record. But this time, I wanted to go in, and I did a Kickstarter campaign. I made sure to record it all with my band, the same group of musicians that I've worked with for a number of years now, and we recorded it almost all with David Menahan of the Neighborhoods at his studio called Woolly Mammoth in Waltham. But it's a pretty personal record for me.
Why the wait?
Why the wait?
Yeah, for 10 years.
That's a good question. I guess maybe because I was busy making records for other people a lot, and also I don't know that I felt like I had the material that I wanted together yet until I was, maybe around 2016, 17. I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I think I got it.
Very cool. Well, let's hear some music. What are we starting off the night with tonight?
You know what? If it's okay with you, I'm going to start with a brand new song that I've only really haven't played much at all, and it's called "Sad Alone Guy," and I just wrote it with Amy Mann a couple months ago. So it's
cool. We have Kimon Kirk on the tiny stage, 95.9 WATD. It's all yours.
All right.
Dude, I had the weirdest dream last night. It was the beginning of the note I started to write to you. But I held off because it didn't seem right to come on so strong without so much as a warning sign or two. I don't wanna be just me anymore. I don't wanna be the sad alone guy. I don't wanna be the way I am. I was stumbling around in a darkened room when I came upon a person that I have to assume I knew. When I turned on the light to get a better look, it was our mutual friend and they were reading my favorite book. And to you, I don't wanna be just me anymore. I don't wanna be the sad alone guy. I don't wanna be the way I am. But a dream's a dream, and you can't control where the story goes, finding secret rooms that no blueprint shows, or just hopes and fears that you juxtapose. I don't wanna be just me anymore. I don't wanna be the sad alone guy. I don't wanna be the way I am. I don't wanna be the way I am. But a dream's a dream.
Very nice. We have Kimon Kirk joining us tonight on the tiny stage, 95.9 WATD. Talk about how you and Amy wrote that song.
It's funny, it basically came together the way all of the songs that I have written with Amy came together, and that is, I had a verse idea, and I'd written a few verses, and I thought just conceptually the song maybe had legs, but I didn't have a chorus, and every time I tried to write a chorus, I couldn't come up with an idea that I liked. And so she volunteered to take a look, as she generously has a couple times before, and she came over to my backyard in LA and listened to the idea, and basically within 10 or 15 minutes had the chorus done. And she was like, here's what I'm thinking. And you know, her craft is so refined, and she's so good at what she does that it was a really enjoyable experience for me. And it's the third song that we've written pretty much that way, and every time it was, you know, she came up with an idea that I never would have thought of. And she was like, I don't know how you feel about singing this, but I have a friend who always says, I don't want to be the sad alone guy. And she was like, so how's that for this idea? And I was like, you know, I think it fits with the personality of the singer who's already been, you know, singing the verses. And I loved it.
How do you compose?
How do I compose?
When you're writing by yourself?
I guess a bunch of different ways, but sometimes there'll be a line that comes into your head, or a melody, sometimes there's an idea about a kind of a song that I might want to write. Oftentimes it's just a phrase, actually. I don't know whether you'll hear it somewhere or it'll pop into your brain. And I also have been trying more over the last few years to be more regimented about, you know, getting up every day and writing in a journal, and just whether it's songwriting or just kind of writing free prose or something like that. If I can get into that groove, that tends to trigger ideas. Usually a lyrical phrase, that happens a lot for me. And then sometimes it might be just a riff or a melody. Or lyrics are more challenging for me usually than music. Music seems to come more readily for whatever reason.
Very cool. What's your very first musical memory?
Whoa. It would probably be listening to Brahms' Variations on a Theme by Haydn, which is something that my dad would play for me often before I would go to bed, and sometimes he would sing it. My parents were both classical flutists, and so it's probably a piece of music like that.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's continue on with some of your music. What are we listening to next?
I think I'm going to do this song called Baby Who Knows that I also wrote with Amy, a few years ago, that's on Altitude. And, yeah.
Let's hear it. Kimon Kirk, 95.9 WATD, it's all yours.
So let's assume you've ended up right where you wanna be. You sure surprised us by your choice. Who would have thought that he could find the words to hold you sway with such an uncompelling voice? Baby, who knows? Nobody knows. Maybe you knew and just forgot. Baby, who knows? Maybe you chose someone because of what they're not. Baby, who knows? Baby, who knows? Baby, who knows? We turned a blind eye to the things you didn't see in him, hoping he would change what's wrong. You failed to mention you're accepting mediocrity, met your expectations all along. Baby, who knows? Nobody knows. Maybe you knew and just forgot. Baby, who knows? Maybe you chose someone because of what they're not. Baby, who knows? Baby, who knows? Baby, who knows? Still, it's a comfort to be near you in a smaller way. Those grapes turned sour long ago. Now that I realized the bar for you was set too high, I won't let disappointment show. So now it's come to where the roles have all but been reversed, and complication holds its ground. He's right for you, and yet you feel as though it's too rehearsed. But could your logic be unsound? Baby, who knows? Nobody knows. Maybe you knew and just forgot. Baby, who knows? Maybe you chose someone because of what they're not. Baby, who knows? 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 Baby, who knows?
Really nice. Kimon Kirk live on the tiny stage tonight. 95.9 WATD. The album title, Altitude. Talk to us about that.
Altitude came about because as I was kind of putting these songs together, I realized that a lot of them had to do with sort of themes of being off the ground. And some of them actually were literally kind of related to flying in planes. Some of them kind of had imagery of just, there's a song called Trampoline that's about, being off the ground and not being grounded, maybe even in a kind of metaphysical or spiritual way or something like that. And so that just kind of felt like a through current. And when I was searching for what to call it, I decided I didn't want to call the record a title of one of the songs. So that was the parameters I put on myself. And I was like, I got to come up with a different title. And I was like, if I could come up with one word that sort of felt like it fit the vibe of the record, that would be good. So Altitude is what showed up. I wanted it to feel like it sort of had a flow from start to finish, so that was important to me.
Yeah, it's one of those albums that has to be listened to in its entirety rather than just individual select tracks.
Wow, cool.
We have Kimon Kirk on the tiny stage tonight, 95.9 WATD. We are up against our first break of this hour. We have more music to share, more to talk about as well. So stick around, 95.9 WATD.
And now, back to Almost Famous on 95.9 WATD.
Welcome back to the Tiny Stage Hour of Almost Famous 95.9 WATD, introducing you to independent bands and musicians from across New England, brought to you each week by Tiny and Sons Glass. I'm John Shea. Tonight we're being joined on the Tiny Stage by singer-songwriter Kimon Kirk. How you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining me tonight. This is great.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So, for those who missed the first part of the show, give another introduction, if you would.
Sure. Well, I'm, as you said, I sing and I write songs, and I'm also a touring bass player, and I also produce records for other people from time to time. So that's kind of the thumbnail snapshot.
I love it. How about your website? Any social media pages you want to throw out there?
Yeah, the website is kimonkirk.com.
Spell that for us, if you would.
Yeah, KIMONKIRK.com, just my full name. I try to keep active enough on social media, so I have an Instagram account and a Facebook page. I'm still kind of grappling with the concept of having both a personal Facebook page and a musician sort of artist one.
Have you made the jump to TikTok yet?
I have not made the jump to TikTok. No. Should I?
I don't know. I'm still working on it. I have an account. I just never use it.
I see. Okay, well, you're ahead of me.
And a new album that just dropped 2 months ago.
Yeah, a new record called Altitude. And this is actually, unless I'm forgetting something, I think this is the first radio appointment I've had with it so far.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to have the debut.
It's good to be back here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, so you're on the West Coast now. What made you leave Massachusetts?
I moved
Besides winter.
Besides winter, yeah. Well, truly. I have been playing, among other things, one of the things that made me decide to do it 3.5 years ago is I've been playing bass with a great artist who's based in Los Angeles named Gabby Moreno. And I had known her for many years, but sort of started touring with her more regularly, I think in about 2016. And I had lived in LA for about 1.5 years in kind of 2008, 2009, 2010. And having worked with Amy Mann over the years, she's a good friend and she's out there, and I have other musical acquaintances, and it just felt like it was time.
Speaking of Amy, this album is loaded with collaborations. Talk about some of the guest appearances.
Yeah. Well, there are 2 songs that Amy helped me write. One called Baby Who Knows that she sings on, and another one called Evergreen that she wrote some lyrics to, along with my friend Amy Correa, who's also a great songwriter. There's a song called Trampoline that I wrote with Sarah Borges, who's
South Shore girl?
Yeah.
Taunton, I think.
Taunton native. Mm-hmm. And she sings on that, and she sings on another song called The Girl I Used to Know, which is a song that I wrote with my friend Dave Champagne. He of Treat Her Right renown. And he and I also wrote another song on the record called Stranded. So yeah, I really like collaborating, and it feels good to write with people, especially when it feels like the thing that you're thinking about writing is suited to a particular individual.
And you mentioned the album was recorded with Dave Minahan.
Yeah, we recorded it at Dave's studio, Woolly Mammoth, which is tremendous. Same place where Dennis Brennan's last record was recorded. And I mean, I can't say enough good things about David Minahan.
And I'm digging his new project, Peak 15.
Oh, yeah.
Great stuff coming out with them.
Cool, right?
With Gina Phillips and Dave Sisophanic. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Oh, I don't know.
From The Liars.
Ah, wow, okay. I mean, David Minahan is, he's a legend.
Yeah, I mean, the Hoods. I mean, come on.
I mean, there's the Neighborhoods. He has for years been Paul Westerberg's lead guitar player, and now in the reformed Replacements plays guitar in that band. I mean, which is incredible. And he's really done everything I think that you could think to try to do in rock and roll. And he's just one of the kindest, most humble, people I've ever met in music.
Let's continue with some of your music. What are we listening to next?
I think I'm going to do a song called What Do I Know?
Let's hear it. Kimon Kirk, WATD, the tiny stage is yours.
Okay.
I used to have it all figured out. I could climb any mountain or crush any lingering doubt. If it got in my way, I would just go around. But what do I know? What do I know? What do I know? What do I know? Driving down the road at top speed, moving too fast to indulge an extraneous need. Something so strong had to be guaranteed. What do I know? What do I know? What do I know? What do I know? I know love. I know peace. I know hope. I know grief. I know stars. I know noise. I know loss. I know void. What do I know? What do I know? What do I know? What do I know?
Awesome. Kimon Kirk, WATD, live on the tiny stage tonight. Talk about how you wrote that one.
That song was one of those, it was like a kind of really emotionally cathartic thing for me to write, and it just sort of came out. I think I was sort of smack dab in the middle of the Trump administration, and I was feeling really disillusioned by that and feeling really lost about how I don't know, the country was feeling and things like that. I was also in the middle of a relationship that I kind of knew was probably going to end. And, it was just like a real honest kind of like, what do I got? I don't know.
Exactly. As crazy as those 4 years were, I think they actually inspired some pretty cool music.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, yeah.
I want to talk about your producing for a little bit here. You've worked with Dennis Brennan, you mentioned several others. Is there a favorite session that you look back on in your history of producing?
Wow. So many, really. I can safely say that every production, every album that I've ever been a part of has a really special place in my memory, and I remember them all. Dennis's record stands out in some ways because it was the last Boston area record that I produced, and it was, working with Dennis is something I had wanted to do for a long time, and that record came about and also was made in a way that was very satisfying, and it was kind of an emotional record for him, I think I can say. I'm actually about to start producing a new record for an artist called Sam Bigelow, who's a piano player and songwriter that I've known since I was 16. We went to high school together, and he lives in Concord, and we're doing it next week here in Jamaica Plain. So I don't have a memory of that yet, but one thing that jumps out right in my mind is doing overdubs with Terry Adams from NRBQ at a little studio in Brattleboro, Vermont that I don't know exists anymore.
Do you ever find yourself being influenced by the people you're producing?
I mean, all the time. Yeah, definitely. Yes, unequivally. I could elaborate if you wanted.
Yeah, go for it if you would, sure.
I mean, just as an artist in general, so many of the people that I've worked with, especially in Boston or anywhere, I feel lucky to have gotten to work with people whose work I really do admire and that I enjoy listening to, and seeing how people work is always influential, I think, on a person, and even seeing the ways that you feel like you might not want to do something is influential, because it's like, oh man, I think I get the idea behind that move, but maybe that's not the way that I would want to do that. And in addition, like if you work with Dennis Brennan, for instance, has been doing his thing for so long and so well that he's like money in the bank, kind of like for instance, like the vocals that Dennis did on that record, Into This World. I would say that 80% of the stuff that you hear was all just like a live straight take, him singing with the band, and like that was hugely inspiring to me, and influential, I think, in a production way, because it's made me even more want to try to capture live performance in the studio as much as possible. And that was actually something that I tried very hard to do when making Altitude. I was like, I want to go into the studio with my full band. I don't want to use any click tracks. I don't want to piece stuff together. I mean, certainly we can overdub and all that stuff, which we did, but I wanted to play. And I wanted to get the best representation of the way my band, and I sounded that I could.
With Dennis, and I think you're a producer, so I'm sure you must have like a selection of songs that you use to test audio equipment.
Sometimes, yes.
And
for sure.
when I'm testing new speakers here at the radio station, for example, one of the songs that I always try and play is "Fool's Waltz."
Oh wow!
Off of Into This World. And
oh, cool!
Just because the way the acoustic guitar on that track is recorded is just unbelievable.
Wow, man, I appreciate that very much. That one of the other really special things, since you mentioned that about making that record, is that we had both Duke Levine and Kevin Barry in the studio at the same time.
Yikes.
And so that meant
good karma.
Such good karma, and everybody in that band executes flawlessly almost all the time. And so what it meant was, especially on songs that had acoustic guitar, which maybe live Dennis would be playing, we kind of let Dennis off the hook, and he just got to sing. And oftentimes Kevin Barry would play the acoustic guitar and Duke would play electric, and we would just cut the whole song live that way. And Kevin is an incredible acoustic guitar player, one of the best acoustic guitar players you'll ever hear. And those guys have all worked together for so long that it was, and his tone is spectacular. And all credit to Dave Wessner, who engineered that record, and Paul Coldry for making. I agree, actually. The acoustic guitar on that record is something I'm very, very pleased with.
That's awesome. We're chatting with Kimon Kirk tonight on the tiny stage. Let's continue with your music. What are we listening to next?
You know what? If it's okay with you, I think I'm going to play the electric guitar.
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
While I tune this thing, I think I'm going to play a song from Altitude called Stranded, which actually took many years to write. My friend David Champagne sent me a bunch of lyrics many years ago that I loved. And it's a song called Stranded, and this is how it goes.
Let's hear it. Kimon Kirk, WATD, live on the tiny stage. It's all yours.
Planes on the runway, frustration gives way to despair. All flights are grounded, all of our big plans are up in the air. Pilots all are joking, teenagers are moping, foreigners are smoking outside. Bags at the curbside, checked all the way to O'Hare. But she don't say, baby, have you got your camera till half the way there? If I left the wrong impression, there's something I should mention, 'cause the air has too much tension up here. If I could make my mind up, I would sleep instead, but I'm stranded in my head. It was just a missed connection, some problem with the engine, but the messages I'm sending aren't clear. One of these mornings they'll push this thing back from the gate. We'll roll off the tarmac, rise over the hilltops, out of the state. But my suitcase isn't on it. I should have just responded. I only wish I wanted to stay. If I could make my mind up, I would sleep instead, but it's all I can do just to get out of bed, 'cause I'm stranded in my head.
Kimon Kirk, WATD, very nice. I think the whistle solo is a lost art in music today.
It's what happens when you don't have a guitar player with you.
So I'm curious to know, how do you differentiate when you're producing for yourself and when you're producing for somebody else?
Another really good question. If I'm being honest, before making this record, I kind of was like, I don't want to produce my own record. I would rather have somebody else calling some of those shots. I approached one friend of mine in Los Angeles, a great musician and producer and bass player called Paul Bryan, who has worked with Amy Mann for many years and actually also used to play with Dennis Brennan and those guys back in the 90s a lot. And he and I are friends, and we would talk about production and music and stuff and bass playing and everything like that. And I talked to him about it, and he was kind of like, I think you should do it yourself. And, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I kind of have a pretty good idea of how I want to do this. And having made records with other people a bunch over the last few years, I was like, no, I trust my band implicitly, and they're all so fantastic. I can lean on those guys when I want to and when I have to, and I have an idea of what I think I want this record to sound like, so I'm just going to start. So we did. Very
cool.
Yeah.
Who are your influences, not only as a performer, but as a producer as well?
Right off the bat, I think one of the ways that without even realizing it, got interested in production was because I was a huge Beach Boys fan and a Brian Wilson fan in particular. And I loved his way of arranging. And then sometime, I think in the late 90s, these records started to come out, which had outtakes of him producing in the late 60s. And I was amazed at how confident he was as a really young man, like a 22-year-old, commanding. I don't mean commanding in a dictatorial way, but like being in control of a group of musicians who were incredibly good, like the Wrecking Crew and studio professionals. And I loved how he knew what he wanted and he could hear it in his mind. And I loved his rapport with the musicians. Like, he had a way of being sort of gentle with them and getting great performances out of them. And that was really inspiring to me. So Brian Wilson is a huge influence as a production influence. I've paid a lot of attention to records that like Joe Henry has made over the years, partially because I know a lot of musicians and some of the engineers that he has worked with. And I know he and T-Bone Burnett, to me, I think of sometimes in a similar zone, because I like that they go for full performances live. They make different sounding records, both from each other and sometimes from some of the records, obviously, that I've been a part of. But I love the idea of someone who has totally open ears and open tastes and is ready to work with an artist to make something that reflects the artist. But also, I don't mind the idea of an album kind of sounding like it was made by a particular group of musicians on that day, and that had a certain sort of sonic aesthetic in mind before it began.
Incredible. I completely agree. That is Kimon Kirk joining us tonight on the WATD Tiny Stage. We have 2 more songs left. What are we listening to next?
Great question. I'm gonna do a song, the first song off Altitude, called Evergreen, and that's gonna be on the acoustic guitar at this time, I think.
All right. Kimon Kirk, WATD. It's all yours.
Evergreen, evergreen is the color of the tallest tree. The color of the tallest tree. The tallest tree that you can see. Through the screen, through the screen, through the pages of a magazine. The pages of a magazine. You'll see a face that looks like me. Patience is a virtue, baby, I can wait. Patience is a virtue, baby, I can wait. Patience is a virtue, baby, I can wait another minute. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid of what you might find out. Afraid of what you might find out. Find out if we talk about. Talk about, talk about, talk about what it might just mean. Talk about what it might mean. What it just might mean to me. Patience is a virtue, baby, I can wait. Patience is a virtue, baby, I can wait. Patience is a virtue, baby, I can wait another minute, a second, an hour, and I'm gonna see you tomorrow. But you're pulling us closer to sorrow. When an old man turns a fool, what more can he do? Evergreen, evergreen is the color of the tallest tree. The color of the tallest tree. The tallest tree that you can see. And evergreen, evergreen is the way that you will always be. The way that you will always be. The way you'll always be to me.
Kimon Kirk, WATD 95.9. Very nice.
Thank you.
I was reading on your website that you've been a featured speaker at Berkeley on topics such as songwriting and performance.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Man, that was a great experience. I'm friends with a great songwriter who is also the head of the songwriting department at Berkeley, a woman named Bonnie Hayes. And she asked me if I would come to one of their summer sessions a few years ago and sort of be on a panel, I guess, for prospective Berkeley students primarily. And actually, I did it with Laurie McKenna, and so the two of us kind of sat up there on stage with an acoustic guitar and, you know, talked about what it's like to have a life in music and write songs and perform and fielded questions by mostly the kids in the audience and stuff. It was really cool. A memory that I treasure.
Let's take a quick break here on Almost Famous. We're on the tiny stage with Kimon Kirk. We have time for one more song. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
We'll do that right after this.
Cool.
95.9 WATD.
And now, back to Almost Famous on 95.9 WATD.
Welcome back to the Almost Famous Tiny Stage, 95.9 WATD, introducing you to independent bands and musicians from across New England every Tuesday night. Brought to you by Tiny & Sons Glass. I'm John Shea, and for a few more moments, we're being joined tonight on the Tiny Stage by Kimon Kirk. How's it going in there?
Very good.
Sounding great tonight. Thank you for making the trip over to Marshfield.
Oh, man, thank you so much, really.
So one final time, give yourself an introduction.
Okay, I'm a songwriter originally from Boston who now lives in Los Angeles. I have a new record called Altitude, which came out this spring. And I'm also I'm a touring bass player and also a record producer.
And where is Altitude available?
I mean, Altitude is available on all of the digital platforms that I think most people are aware of. If you want to buy it, you can purchase it through Bandcamp, and it's on vinyl and CD, and you can buy digital copies. You can listen to it on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever else you listen with. And
which one pays you the most money?
I mean, Bandcamp is the one that pays me the most money.
Bandcamp, go to Bandcamp. Awesome. And your website, if you would.
Yeah, my website is kimonkirk.com. That's KIMONKIRK.com.
And before we get into your final song tonight, you've been doing the solo act, you've been a touring musician, you've been a producer, you've given presentations at Berkeley. What advice do you have for a young performer looking to get their feet wet in the music business right now?
I think I would say what I think it's the only kind of advice that I know how to give, which is get as good as you can at the thing that you really like to do. And I mean, assuming we're talking about music, if you're someone who likes to write songs, write as many songs as you can write, and work at it all the time. And if you like, playing guitar and singing, practice it a lot. I mean, that's, sometimes people will ask about, like, where should you move, or whom should you talk to, or what kinds of things should you do in order to, meet other musicians. I think that's a really good thing to do.
Networking is the key to everything, I think.
I mean, I think the way you live your life can sort of, I don't know, every personality type has a different way of doing things, but I never found that it was kind of like that it worked for me to kind of like, I don't know, be going and shaking a lot of hands or passing out business cards or anything like that. It was more like, find things that you like to do in music, and then my guess is that you will find like-minded people doing those things. And so, write songs with other people if you like to write songs by yourself, but mean it, commit. I think that's what I would say. Very
nice. That's Kimon Kirk joining us tonight on WATD. We have time for one more song. What are we going up to the top of the hour with?
I think I'm going to do this song that Laurie McKenna and I wrote. It's called Cheap Therapy, and we wrote it in her house.
All right.
And she had a list of titles, and that was one of them, Cheap Therapy. I didn't know where it was going to go, but it ended
good album title, too.
Yeah, it is a good album title.
Thank you again. Get home safely. We'll talk to you soon, and let's hear the song.
Thanks so much, John. All right.
We need a ride into the city and a pack of cigarettes. There's a band playing downtown. We ain't seen live yet. I ain't working in the morning or saving any lives. There are problems we ain't gonna solve tonight. It feels so good just to blow off some steam. A dance floor and a drink is all we need. And cheap therapy. You can spend a lot of money slipping on somebody's couch, tracing all the lines back, straighten them out. We're all a little crazy, hell-bent, I know, but we didn't come out to go home alone. It feels so good just to blow off some steam. Dance floor and a drink is all we need. Feels to me like cheap therapy. Small town schemes, we're confessing in the front seat, sharing all of our parking lot dreams. Feels to me like cheap therapy. Do you want to get high? Do you need to get numb? Do you want to fall in love tonight just to forget someone? Into the city in a pack of cigarettes. There's a band playing downtown. We ain't seen live yet. I ain't working in the morning or saving any lives. It feels so good just to blow off some steam. A dance floor and a drink is all we need. And cheap therapy. A small town schemes, we're confessing in the front seat, sharing all of our parking lot dreams. Feels to me like cheap therapy. Cheap therapy. Cheap therapy. Cheap therapy.